Clara stood at the door of her house watching Richard drive away in his car, the tires squealing on the road as if they wanted to take with them all the dreams she had nurtured over the past 12 years. Richard had always been a man of the road. As a personal driver for an influential politician, he traveled the country, spending days, sometimes weeks, away from home. It was a demanding job that required not only skill behind the wheel, but also discretion and loyalty. Richard took pride in being reliable, always ready to meet his boss's needs, even if that meant sacrificing time with his family. Clara, his wife of 30 years, remained at home. They met when they were very young, during a summer party in Richard's hometown. He was 17 and she was 16. It was love at first sight. Shortly after, they were inseparable. Richard got the job as a driver soon after their wedding, and Clara decided not to work to take care of the house, and later their son, Lucas, who was now 12 years old. The house they lived in had belonged to Richard's family for generations. It was a modest building, full of memories and stories. Richard's grandparents built the house with their own hands, and he always took pride in being able to keep the family tradition alive, even though maintaining the house was a constant challenge. While Richard was away, Clara took care of everything. She was the foundation that kept the family together, even with her husband's frequent absence. But the loneliness weighed heavily. The days were long, and Lucas's company was her only relief. She longed for the occasional visits from Dona Isabel, her mother-in-law, who lived not far away and came to help her whenever she could. A solitary routine without her husband and the household responsibilities began to wear Clara down. Every time Richard left on a new trip, she felt a tightness in her heart, fearing the day he might not come back. The long hours of waiting, sleepless nights, and constant worries left marks on her soul. Each time he left, part of her said goodbye, and today was no different. Things were more intense, as they had had a heated argument. Richard, the man who once promised to be hers forever, was drifting away once again, taking with him the certainty of a future that now seemed uncertain. "Don't worry, my dear," Dona Isabel, her mother-in-law, approached, placing a comforting hand on Clara's shoulder. Her voice was soft but laden with experience. "Life is full of ups and downs. You are stronger than you think." Clara forced a smile, but the sadness in her eyes could not be hidden. Dona Isabel had always been a kind woman, and even amidst her own struggles, she tried to offer support. Her presence was a foundation amid the chaos. Clara knew that the true battle was just beginning. The ringing of the phone made her jump. She hesitated but answered. The voice of Richard on the other end of the line was cold and distant, as if he were speaking from another reality. "Clara, we need to talk." I found someone," he said, the hesitation in his voice almost imperceptible. Clara's heart raced, and she fell silent, unsure of how to respond. Those words were a blow, a punch to the stomach. She couldn't process the information. "What?" she finally managed to murmur, her voice choked. "It was Richard." Clara hesitated before answering, her heart pounding. "Clara," his voice sounded from the other end of the line, "I found someone. And I don't want to continue this anymore. I want a divorce." Her world collapsed in an instant, and all she could do was close her eyes, trying to process the devastation of his words. "Richard, you're being selfish," she replied, her voice trembling. "And Lucas, what will you do about him? I'll let you stay in the house that belongs to my family, but for that, you will be responsible for taking care of my mother. And if that's not your interest, please leave the house immediately," Richard said. At that moment, Clara was in shock because she no longer recognized her husband, and all those demands made it seem like her world was crumbling. Those words echoed in her mind, and Clara felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. Tears began to slide down her face, uncontrollably, and in a surge of emotion she hung up the phone. The feeling of despair wrapped around her like a thick fog. She got up and ran to the bathroom, locking herself in, wishing the world would disappear. "Clara?" Dona Isabel's voice sounded from the other side of the door, full of concern. "Let me in, please. What happened?" Clara didn't respond. She sank into the sink, the reflection in the mirror showing a devastated woman. The tears kept falling, and the weight of reality crushed her. All the love she had given, all the nights waiting while Richard was away, everything seemed to have been in vain. The bathroom door trembled slightly with Donna Isabel's gentle touch. "My daughter, I'm here. Please let me in," she said, her voice so tender that Clara felt a thread of hope weave through the pain. Finally, Clara opened the door. Donna Isabel enveloped her in a tight embrace, and Clara allowed herself to cry on her shoulder. The older woman stroked her hair, her presence a balm for the soul. "I feel so alone, Donna Isabel," Clara confessed, voice choked. "You are not alone, Clara. We are in this together. I will always be here for you and Lucas," Donna Isabel replied firmly. As the days went by, Clara began to take care of Donna Isabel, even reluctantly at first, but she remembered how much they supported each other. Richard rarely showed up and only made brief calls directed at his mother and child, always in a superficial manner. With each heartfelt conversation, Clara was surprised to discover that her mother-in-law had also faced difficulties in her marriage. "I also suffered in silence, Clara," Donna Isabel said one afternoon while they prepared a dessert in the kitchen. "But we need to find joy in the little things." That revelation brought them even closer together. Clara looked into her mother-in-law's eyes, seeking comfort and a bit of strength. Life had changed drastically in a matter of minutes, but even in the darkness there was a faint light beginning to shine. Who would have thought that after so many years of marriage, it would be her mother-in-law who would help her find her way back? "What are we going to do now?" Clara asked, still unsure of how to move forward. "We'll take it one step at a time. First, we need to take care of Lucas. And then, well, then we can think about how to rebuild ourselves." Donna Isabel replied, her gaze firm and determined. Clara nodded, feeling a new determination starting to bloom within her. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. It wouldn't face this alone. Together, they could find a path to follow, even if the road was difficult. Clara found herself facing a new reality that felt overwhelming. The house, once filled with laughter and family moments, was now steeped in heavy silence, broken only by the occasional sound of Donna Isabel's breathing as she settled into the armchair in the living room, her gaze lost out the window. The image of her son Lucas playing in the street reminded Clara that, despite everything, there was a light to be protected. "You need me, Clara," Donna Isabel said, pulling Clara from her thought. The mother-in-law's voice had a gentle yet firm tone, as if she were trying to reaffirm her presence. "I can help. I'm not as fragile as you think." Clara forced a smile, though tears still threatened to escape. "But you are Richard's mother. I don't know if I can take care of both of us." Donna Isabel shook her head, her expression serene. "And I don't know what to do without you. Richard made his choices, but we don't have to suffer because of them. What concerns me is you and Lucas. We need to unite." Hearing those words, Clara felt a wave of gratitude. The idea that they could support each other was comforting. Ever since Richard announced the separation, Clara felt adrift, unsure of where to go. Donna Isabel's suggestion to join forces felt like a light at the end of the tunnel. "Okay, let's do it," Clara responded, voice stronger. "What do you have in mind?" Donna Isabel smiled, and Clara saw a spark of determination in her eyes. "I remember when I used to make jams and preserves. The neighbors always praised them. And you, Clara, have always had a special talent. We don't have much. We can start small, sell at fairs perhaps. Over time we can expand," suggested Donna Isabel, already sketching a mental plan. "We need something that brings us together, something that makes us feel alive again." Clara nodded, realizing that within that idea was a mix of hope and renewal. So, on that sunny afternoon, the two women began to discuss the recipes they could revive. As they spoke, Clara noticed how Donna Isabel's presence was an anchor amidst the emotional turmoil she was experiencing. The following weeks were filled with laughter and experiments in the kitchen. The two women became almost like a team of chefs, measuring ingredients, testing recipes, and even creating labels for the products they planned to sell. The sweet smell of cooking fruits filled the house, and Clara felt she was rediscovering a part of herself that had been lost. One morning, while organizing the products for a local fair, Clara was in a corner of the room with a cleaning cloth in her hand when her eyes fell on a crumpled piece of paper hidden behind the couch. Curious, she crouched down to pick up the note. When she unfolded it, heart raced. It was a lottery ticket she had bought months ago. just one of many she had set aside, forgotten amidst the turmoil of her life. Her hands trembled as she checked the numbers. 1, 2, 3. They all matched. Clara could hardly believe what she was seeing. "It can't be true," she exclaimed, her voice barely escaping her chest. She ran to the kitchen where Donna Isabel was preparing tea. "Look at this," Clara shouted, holding the ticket with her trembling hand. Donna Isabel, with a look of surprise, quickly approached. "What happened, Clara?" she asked, concerned. I won. I won the lottery." Clara's voice was almost a whisper mixed with disbelief and hope. Donna Isabel's expression changed from concern to pure joy. "My God, Clara, this is amazing. What are you going to do with the money?" "I don't know. I still don't know." Clara looked out the window where the sun was beginning to set, tinting the sky orange and pink. "Maybe we can expand the store, or maybe a trip." Donna Isabel laughed, a light and contagious laugh. "Trip would be wonderful, but maybe we should think about something more lasting. A secure future for you and Lucas." Clara nodded, feeling a wave of emotion wash over her. The prize was more than money. It was an opportunity to rewrite her story. "Let's talk to Lucas as soon as he gets back from school. This could change our lives." The two women spent the afternoon discussing the possibilities, laughing and dreaming together. They both decided to set up a store to sell their products, and were planning a renovation of the house and an international trip to celebrate their new achievements. Clara felt that life was finally taking a positive turn. The weight of her separation from Richard seemed a little lighter, as if the prize had the power to dissipate the dark clouds hanging over her life. However, while Clara and Donna Isabel were planning for the future, Richard was trying to get in touch with Clara. The phone rang incessantly, but she ignored the call. His voice irritated her, reminding her of the past she wanted to leave behind. "He doesn't deserve my attention," she murmured to Donna Isabel, who agreed. The next day, Clara and Donna Isabel were in the store, organizing the products and thinking about how they could improve the space. "Look, Clara, maybe we should put some flowers at the entrance. That would attract more customers," suggested Donna Isabel while tidying up some shelves. They worked side by side, the energy between them vibrant and full of hope. It was a new beginning, and Clara was determined to make the most of every moment. However, while their lives began to flourish, the shadow of Richard still lingered in the back of her mind. She knew that sooner or later he would try to reach out again. Richard was sitting in a small cafe, looking at the phone in his hand. He knew he needed to call Clara, but the weight of the past few weeks made the simple act of dialing a number an unbearable burden. He thought about how everything had crumbled so quickly. At first, Richard's new girlfriend seemed perfect. She was attractive, charming, and genuinely appeared to care about his well-being. But it soon became clear that her intentions were not so noble. She had her eyes on Richard's savings, believing he had enough money to support her in a lavish lifestyle. Blinded by her charm, Richard missed the signs. One day he came home to find the door ajar. His heart raced. Upon entering, he saw that all his valuables had disappeared along with his savings. She was gone, leaving only a brief note. "Sorry, but you don't have enough for me." The betrayal hurt, but worse was yet to come. Richard discovered that she had attempted to scam his boss, a prominent local politician. She used personal information she obtained from Richard to get close to the politician, trying to convince him to invest in a fraudulent scheme. When things started to go wrong, she vanished again, but not before leaving a trail of trouble. Scandal broke in the media, and the politician was accused of involvement in fraud and other crimes. Even without concrete evidence against Richard, his association with the scammer girlfriend was enough for him to be fired. Now unemployed and without savings, he was sinking rapidly. Sitting in the cafe, Richard sighed deeply. He knew he needed to confront Clara and ask for help, but he had no idea how she would react. Truth was that he was reaping the consequences of his own wrong choices. He dialed the number, hoping Clara still had a bit of compassion for him, even after everything. And that's exactly what happened. Days later, during the store's peak hours, the phone rang. Clara hesitated, but Donna Isabel, noticing the expression on her daughter's face, said, "Answer it, Clara. You need to hear what he has to say." With a deep sigh, Clara picked up the phone. "Hello?" "Clara, it's me, Richard. His voice came through, filled with a mix of hope and nervousness. I need to talk to you. It's important. Important for whom? Clara replied. The coldness in her voice was undeniable. You made your decision when you chose to leave us. I know, but I want to try again. I'm willing to change. Donna Isabel, who was listening to the conversation, shook her head disapprovingly. Clara felt a wave of anger, but also a small thread of compassion. Richard, you can't just come back and expect everything to be the way it was before. We're moving on. But I am your husband, Clara. You were, she corrected firmly. That was your commitment. Now your mother and I have a new future ahead of us. A future that doesn't include you. I need to talk to you. Things aren't good for me, he said, almost pleading. Clara felt a mix of anger and sadness. Richard always had this ability to turn his misfortunes into a burden she had to carry. Many things have changed since you left home. I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm not the same anymore, Clara said, determined not to let herself be swayed by the manipulation that had always characterized their relationship. Richard sighed on the other end of the line. I know. I'm going through tough times. My girlfriend left me when she found out I no longer had a job. I'm broke and without support. Please, Clara, I just need a chance. A chance? Richard, you had so many chances and wasted them. I can't be your salvation, Clara said, her voice choking. She knew this was true, but she also felt a twinge of compassion. Still, all that remained was to hang up the call. After a few more words, Clara hung up. The weight she felt in her chest dissipated slowly. She looked at Donna Isabel, who was watching her with a smile of approval. You were strong, my daughter. That's how it's done. Now, let's focus on what really matters. The two worlds were so opposite now. One full of uncertainties and the other filled with hope. Clara took a deep breath, determined not to let the past shape her future choices. Together, they would face any challenges that came their way. Days later, however, fate had Richard approaching Clara's house again. He was working at a local market because it was now the only way for him to survive by delivering groceries for a customer, and seeing the store thrive, a wave of nostalgia and regret washed over him. Clara, upon spotting her ex-husband, felt a mix of emotions. What are you doing here, Richard? She questioned, firmness in her voice contrasting with the fragility she felt inside. Clara, I wanted to see how you and Lucas are, he replied, his voice faltering. She crossed her arms, challenging him with her gaze. You no longer have a place in our lives. I built something here, something real, with Donna Isabel and our son. You are not part of that. The words came out with a weight Richard had never experienced before. He looked into Clara's eyes, finally realizing the strength she had found. I know I was wrong, he said, his head down, but I wanted you to know that I'm trying to change. Clara took a step forward, her gaze steady. Change isn't just a word, Richard. It's an action. You need to take responsibility. The silence between them was heavy, but Clara felt that the conversation was finally closing a painful chapter. When Richard said goodbye, Clara felt a wave of relief. He left the house, and Clara went back inside, where Donna Isabel and Lucas were waiting for her. She realized that she had finally freed herself from the past and the ties that bound her. With enough money for them to live very well for the rest of their lives, the store thriving, and a new life ahead, Clara felt empowered, ready to face the future with confidence. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next video.